This is a unique kind of video that I'd like to call a Speedwalkthrumentary. And as the name would suggest, it's a speedrun of a game, combined with a somewhat concise walkthrough of a game. And once inside, you'll never guess what we have to do next.
Yeah, that's right, you better pull me. Yeah, nice and slow.
Because they can decide whether this is your personal best or your personal test on how much you value your sanity. Combined with the documentary of a game that can range from its development, but then Jeremy was invited to Japan to get a first-hand look at the Sega Saturn and the PlayStation 1. The subtle coloring, the tasteful thickness of it, that goddamn controller. Listen, Toby, we completely get it, not wanting her to be some salubrious fantasy to the minds of the public. Yes, I'm so glad you understand. But it seems like you're just missing one large factor. Two of them even. And what's that? Well, it's that. To perhaps its in-game lore, but it really just depends on the game. When Lara combines both Scion pieces, she must have forgot to read the LSD warning and experiences what I can only imagine is what happens when you divide by 0. And in this case, it'll be the story of the original Tomb Raider's development. And all of this is packaged with the ridiculous amount of jokes that I'm sure at least one person will get. If I had to describe this T-Rex in a couple words, they'd probably be
soft, overrated, a bitch.
Fights just take too long, and enemies don't necessarily drop loot either. And although there's nothing more Lara would love to do than engage him to some 12 gauge, or option B.
Finally!
Which one do you think I got most of the time?
Oi mate, is that the Scribblenauts art style I see?
Yes, I had a unhealthy obsession with this game as a kid. For the purposes of making this video, and more importantly, my own sanity, this will be considered a segmented any % run, but this video is more for showcasing glitches. How would our adventurer manage to bypass this gap in the wall? Well, it's certainly not by swan diving at it, and not by wall bugging around it, and especially not by asking nicely.
Fuck you, you bitch ass.
Rather than getting on any leaderboard. Also, I used the routing shown in BECKSKI's GDQ run of this game, who also holds the world record for classic controls. I'll also be uploading the segments of my run to avoid ending up in a video like this.
I love speedrunning. I love it so much that, in fact, if the Allfather gave me the choice to be forever bound to speedrun every game I play, and get my asshole blasted by the Moby Huge every time I have to reset, or come home to a cooked meal and a foot massage.
Now, it's not exactly the most riveting of runs, but after this guy got pretty much sent to virtual purgatory, I think I'd rather be safe than sorry. Anyways, enjoy, and if you can, wear headphones. The studio behind the original Tomb Raider franchise was Core Design, but before there was Core Design, there was Gremlin Graphics. Gremlin's sales executive, Jeremy Heath Smith, had already been in the gaming industry for about 8 years, and all was going well until they had some financial issues and had to shut down many of their studio locations. One particular studio located in Derby, England, was on the verge of being shut down, but that's when Jeremy came to them with a proposal.
Oi, listen up, you lot. The boys up top reckon this place will get the chop any day now.
But Jeremy, being the savvy businessman that he was, planned on making a new game development studio and gave the Derby team an ultimatum: either be forced to relocate and drive a 40-mile commute to work, or join him in his new gaming company, Core Design. And after borrowing a 16-pound loan from his grandmother, Core Design was up and running. After some time had passed, Jeremy would end up buying out other members of Core Design, and the studio was doing well and had solid sellers like Rick Dangerous and Chuck Rock. And although Jeremy was a businessman through and through, he gave his team creative freedom that made the developers happy, and they even sometimes stayed later to program their own games. And at the end of 1994, they were eventually bought out by Sensor Gold. At the time, they mainly focused on 16-bit games, but then Jeremy was invited to Japan to get a first-hand look at the Sega Saturn and the PlayStation 1. New game, piping off the pan, 16-bit, first-person, side-scroller. Impressive. But let's see what you're up to. Alright. By the Queen. Look at the use of CD-ROMs instead of cartridges for game storage. The specialized GPU for 3D graphics. The subtle coloring. The tasteful thickness of it. That goddamn controller. It's safe to say that Jeremy was impressed. So impressed, in fact, that after his visit from Japan, Jeremy would then steer the company to start developing more intricate 32-bit games. And this is where they would release one of their most important, significant, and revolutionary games that the company had made up until that point, which of course was the infamous Scottish Open Virtual Golf for the Sega Saturn in 1995. Steady. Woo, look at that go, baby. It was the first 32-bit game they'd release, and would be followed up with a sequel to their popular game, Thunderstrike, a chopper action game that after having played myself, is pretty decent, but just doesn't scratch the itch like some good old golf does. Now, distinguished viewer, you're probably asking yourself, when does Tomb Raider come about? And to answer that, we first need to take ourselves a year earlier, into 1994, and introduce ourselves to the man who started it all, Toby Gard. Toby was a young art graduate, and with that came the all too familiar artistic ambition to be later exploited by corporates. But that's later down the line. But for now, after being hired by Core Design, he created this one Mario Kart clone that was interesting. But what he really wanted to develop was a 3D action-adventure game taking inspiration from Indiana Jones. Not only will it be a game full of action, adventure, and pyramids, but get this, the player controls the character from a third-person perspective in 3D.
Goodness, Toby, don't scare me like that. You almost made me spill my beans.
And Toby partnered closely with Core Design programmer Paul Douglas, and they would begin creating a pitch for Jeremy in hopes of getting greenlit for development. With the release of the Tomb Raider Remastered collection, I figure it no better way to kick off this channel than with such a legendary franchise. And as you may know, there have been many variations of the protagonist Lara Croft, but for this video, this isn't the version. This isn't the Pain Olympics version of Lara. Oh no. By the end of this video, you'll understand just how insane the woman you see before you is. But before we can begin, let's go over some mechanics. Being considered a filthy zoomer means that for most of my life, movement in 3D video games has usually looked like this. Just look at it, all nice and fluid. But before that, you'd have to get used to using tank controls, move Lara relative to where she's facing instead of the camera. And out of the 4 directional inputs, only 2 can actually move Lara. The other 2 buttons turn her either left or right. What that means in practice is that if you're outside of the range to interact with an item, first, you've got to turn. Accidentally ran past the keyhole and would like to readjust? First, you've got to turn. In a fight with a pack of wolves that are constantly jumping behind Lara, you get the point. But being the geniuses that they were at Core Design, they added a couple of extra buttons to make your experience slightly easier. They added a roll button, which instantly flips Lara 180 degrees. And then they added a walk button, which allows Lara to step forwards, backwards, and also gives her access to side steps instead of. And the last button dedicated to movement is the tried and true jump button. Because the game is meant to be explored, Lara's gonna be jumping a lot. There's the backflip, side jumps, and forward jumps from both standing and running. There's also the classic swan dive, that'll be useful later. Also, Lara can jump very high in this game, and sometimes too high. And other times, a jump can be a little off. So naturally, they added a grab mechanic, so she's able to grab onto most ledges by holding the action button while falling. But because this isn't the Stone Age of gaming anymore, the remaster now comes with the modern controls option. It provides faster turning, more air maneuverability, and a more overall fluid experience. So distinguished viewer, I would like for you to guess which one I pick for this run. Why? Because I hate myself. Because it gives us that classic feel that the developers intended. Lastly, Lara can unholster her weapons and auto-lock on anything breathing. Seriously, by the end of this game, she's the only character introduced that is still breathing. But now that we've got the basics down,
are you ready?
The story opens up in Los Alamos, New Mexico with a large explosion. I think they made a movie about that. And a closer look shows someone trapped in a block of ice. A swift transition to Calcutta, India shows Larson, a Texan mercenary who's just every bit of the stereotype, approach Lara with the job proposal from his boss, Jacqueline Natla.
From Natla Technologies, you know, creator of all things bright and beautiful.
Seal it, Larson.
Ma'am.
Feast your eyes on this, Lara. How does that make your wallet rumble?
I'm sorry. I only play for sport.
Then you'll like a big park. Peru, vast mountain ranges to cover, Sheer walls of ice, rocky crags, savage winds, and there's this little trinket. An age-old artifact of mystical power is buried in the unfound tomb of Qualopec. That's my interest. You could leave tomorrow. Are you busy tomorrow?
We then see Lara making her way through a mountain range with her guide Carlos, who's just every bit of the stereotype. Lara then makes her way above the entrance to open it, and when a pack of wolves jumps out, Carlos would get his lifelong wish to be cast as Liam Neeson, just the worst one. Lara then somehow puts on Mistress Grace and jumps down and kills the wolves in classical FMV fashion. But not before they get to Carlos. Lara is now all alone and makes her way to the first level. Caves is a pretty straightforward level where the goal is to open the door that blocks the entrance to the next level. The atmosphere of the level is eerie. The silence is interrupted only by Lara's footsteps and the echoes of the unknown that reverberate in the distance. Many who have played the game may remember the twin bridges, the pack of wolves, or their first encounter with the bear. Some may even remember finding out about this first hidden secret. But I would like for you to remember how we are going to skip all of that. Immediately, we begin with the most optimal way of traversal. Running jumps are the fastest way to traverse a level, and the top runners use optimized routes to squeeze in as many of them as possible. But at this time, stamina bars weren't commercially sold in stores yet, so we can leap to our heart's content. After some more running jumps, and adding some bats to her hit list, Lara can somehow not break her legs, pull this lever, and set up for the first glitch. Now, one would assume up until now that Lara obeys the laws of physics, but every once in a while, physics obeys the laws of Lara. Take this barricade for example. If Lara were to try to jump at this like any other action-adventure protagonist, but let's say that we were to stand in this corner, rotate Lara about this much, and execute 2 running jumps while holding the action key, clearly, she is not human. But this works because her collision hitbox interacts differently with the static mesh of the barricade, and after making it past the gate, it's time for another one of the laws of Lara immediately after. Lara can somehow use trickster style and bug herself to the top of platforms if she jumps at them at specific angles. Whenever Lara embeds herself inside of a wall, the game's logic forces her to the top of whatever wall that is, allowing for massive time saves later in the game. This wall bug combined with the barricade glitch skips over just a minute of platforming. And to finish, Lara exacts revenge for Carlos once more, pulls this lever, jumps down, and completes the level. The city of Vilcabamba is a unique level with impressive details for the time. There's furniture, stables, this thing right here, that thing right there, and a watering hole. We'll just toss that in there. There are many segments to this level, including a swimming part, but we won't have time for that because first up is taking care of some wolves and loading up another entry of the... Although leg day isn't something that Lara would ever skip, because I mean, just like, look at that vertical. There are places that she can't just grab onto, like this ledge, also for example. But taking another look at the laws of Lara tells us that we can position Lara near the corner, turn about 45 degrees, and holding the jump key until Lara embeds herself inside of the wall. Now, if she were just any other action-adventure protagonist, this could be considered a soft lock and she'd be done for. But pressing the action key causes Lara to fall down while still stuck inside of the wall, and pressing roll turns her 180 degrees and clips her back into the ceiling, where we can then get a good look at those 1996 textures. But what's really happening is that Lara is flickering because the game is forcing her to the ceiling while also dropping her down very rapidly. But I like to think that this is a space-time continuum trying to tear Lara molecule by molecule for constantly disrespecting the laws of physics. We can then turn Lara by holding upright until she's facing the ledge, and holding the roll key slowly moves Lara forward until she pops out the other side of the ledge. Now we need to grab these 2 key items and perform what's known as a corner bug. It's essentially just performing the first step of the flicker glitch, but because there's a walkable surface above, she can land safely instead of... This is a very useful glitch, so we'll be seeing a lot of it. heading around the corner and just massacring these bats. We can use one of the keys that we just picked up, and would you look at the time? Besides the flicker glitch, the other glitches we've seen have been pretty tame, but this next glitch is probably the most difficult and precise in the game, and it's known as the... Chances are that if you've been on the internet long enough, or like over the age of 15, you may remember a flash game known as QWOP, where you use the Q, W, O, and P key to move this athlete across a racetrack. Lara has the ability to go underneath specific blocks that cut off certain sections of the level. And if this block were to be, I don't know, a doorway that leads to the end of the level, skipping a bunch of platforming, more platforming, lever pulling, more platforming, more lever pulling, and more platforming, I kind of think I want to go under that door. The glitch gets its name from the pose Lara makes whenever she lands on the floor, but is still rising from a jump. As she's in this QWOP state, the game fall speed value for Lara rises as it tries to push her down so she can land somewhere. And after 8 seconds, the fall speed value was enough to push Lara under by half a block. We can hold down the action key to perform a vaulting animation that pushes her forward, and this movement combined with the QWOP state allows her to go under 2 tiles of blocks. So in this level, Lara can achieve the QWOP state by jumping on this low ceiling at a very precise angle and timing. Once in the QWOP state, Lara can then make her way towards the door, and while holding the action key, can skip under and save about an entire minute of... It's good to mention that this glitch would be near impossible to perform on a normal run. As of this recording, this is the setup that I used to make the glitch work. It might be patched out the game if you try, so this is just a quick little forewarning. Just gonna put that right there on your forehead. There's also another QWOP at the beginning of the level, but I kinda wanna finish this video, so we're just gonna skip that. After the main QWOP, the end of the level has Lara pull this lever that drops her into some water where she can swim, pull another lever, and place the second item to complete the level. Are you sure about that? And make her way to the... This is a very special level. Those who have played it may remember the waterfall, this hidden shotgun right here, or this open biome full of lush greenery. But I and many others remember this place for a whole different reason. The goal of this level is to stop this waterfall that blocks the tomb of Qualopec by collecting 3 cogs. The level begins by going down the waterfall to depopulate these wolves, and then going up here to pick up this med pack that we're gonna need. The lore behind this place is that it's a valley that's been, well, lost, and for some reason that cannot be explained, inhabits dinosaurs. Now, in all fairness to the remaining survivors, we should just let them live in peace and just go collect the cogs. Now, making our way down, Lara could then run past these raptors with one taking a chunk out of her, but that's okay. And then immediately save.
Why are you saving? Why are you saving? Why are you saving? Why are you saving?
Why? Why you start asking why? This is why. If I had to describe this T-Rex in a couple words, they'd probably be
Soft. Overrated. A bitch.
It has this big health bar, can run much faster than Lara, has an insta-kill, and is just a straight up DPS machine. The first cog is next to this bridge that requires some climbing and a running jump into a grab, but the faster way is to perform a wall bug that drops her right next to the cog. Switching to old graphics makes it easier to position Lara for this wall bug, and the setup makes this angle much more consistent to get. And this is also a good time to discuss RNG and AI. Not you. Both of these things are what keep speedrunners up at night and give us moments like this. And this. Thankfully, there's not that much in this game that can't be avoided, and typically, we want to run past as many encounters as possible, and despite the urge to fuel Lara's insatiable bloodlust, the fights just take too long, and enemies don't necessarily drop loot either. But sometimes, there are enemies that we do have to kill because they can make glitches substantially harder. But the T-Rex is an exception to this rule, because even though he can make this wall bug much harder than it otherwise would be, for the aforementioned reasons like it being a but given that we avoid it altogether, it then learns to move Tail Whip, which collides with Lara's hitbox, messing up the alignment for the wall bug and making it very hard to retry the wall bug without reloading a save. Also, whenever Lara aggroes a creature in the game, they have a chance to trigger a special animation when first initiating combat with Lara. This animation seems to be random, but it is important because it locks the enemies still for a couple of seconds, which gives us enough time to run away and avoid them, or kill them, or do a glitch to, also avoid them. And as you saw, the first 2 raptors didn't play their animation, and that led to some damage. And the same thing applies to this T-Rex right here, which can just beeline straight to Lara as soon as she makes it to the wall. This, coupled with how far the T-Rex is from Lara when she initially arrives, can waste a lot of time to perform just one wall bug.
Actually, this level's not that bad.
Shh. Don't minimize my trauma. But after grabbing the first cog, we can then jump down and hopefully avoid the T-Rex. Jump past an unsuspecting raptor, perform another wall bug, and then grab the second cog. And with only one cog left,
Ooh, I'm about to dive in.
we can swim out of the cave and meet face to face with the devil himself. I'd like to call this next section the Derrick Henry, because now Lara has to run from this cave all the way to that cave with the reptilian equivalent of the Legion of Boom trying to stop her. Even with running jumps, both the raptors and the T-Rex are faster than Lara, and our only saving grace here is that they all trigger their animations to stop them in place, allowing us to get away. Once we're near the temple, 2 more raptors come out and... Now that we're at the temple, the cog is underwater and we have successfully completed the Derrick Henry. And that waterfall that we needed to stop, where was that again? After exiting the water, we are greeted by this pack of scoundrels. And I really hope you like hitting that F9 key, because they can decide whether this is your personal best or your personal test on how much you value your sanity. And once outside the temple, the fun doesn't stop there because
You thought it was over.
through the power of Premiere Pro, you've been blessed with only seeing when I've succeeded this trail of tears. Pick up this med pack, pick up this med pack, up this med pack, pick up this med pack that you're gonna need. But make no mistake, distinguished viewer, this trail is full of tears. My tears. Now that we finally made it, the rest of this level should really be a breeze, and now we can just jump over here and backtracking past the start of the level, we can hop over the water, perform a curve jump by first aligning Lara with the edge of the block, performing a running jump and holding right. I then pick up the shotgun, and placing down each cog then blocks the waterfall. We can then skip backtracking back to the waterfall by jumping over this gate and performing a standing jump but curving it to the right to then slide down and avoid falling in the water. And finally, we have reached Lara has now finally reached the artifact she was sent to retrieve by Natla, and since this game was inspired heavily by Indiana Jones, it surely can't be as simple as just walking up to it and taking it off its pedestal. And no, it wouldn't. If we were playing the game regularly. Performing this setup, we can avoid this tile, which will normally close the gate and force us to complete the rest of the level. Lara can then jump over the boulder, pick up the artifact, and then exit the tomb. As Lara exits the cave, she catches a strong whiff of Miller Lite. Or wait. Is that Michelob Ultra? And would you look who it is? Given that we skipped this bit, this is technically the first mandatory boss fight of the run, but it kinda just goes something like this. And after exploiting Larsen's abysmal peripheral vision, we have now completed level 4. After exploiting Larsen's decaying peripheral vision, he explains that the artifact that Lara is searching for is called the Scion. He also mentions that Natla hired another treasure hunter, Pierre Dupont, but I'm American so Pierre Dupont, and how he's already after the second piece of the artifact. And after that lore dump, it seems like Larsen's memory is also decaying because he attempts to tackle Lara, but forgot which version this one is. We then transition to Lara on top of an elevator shaft, where she burns the steel wire ropes and casually just demonstrates Olympic level grip strength. She then makes her way to the top of the building.
She's gonna do a superhero landing. Wait for it.
And it turns out that Natla isn't even there. This leaves Lara to ransack her office and find an old prayer book by Brother Herbert, which then gives us another lore dump, where it turns out that the Scion was split by 3 rulers of the lost city of Atlantis. And wherever there's magical artifacts involved, you can bet that there are ancient civilizations to go along with it. So the next piece of this Scion artifact is rumored to be at the tomb of the Atlantis ruler, Tihocan. The tomb is located deep within a monastery in Greece, so that's where Lara heads next. And when she arrives, it seems that Pierre has beat her there.
Pierre, you litterbug.
Meanwhile, at core design.
After some time, Toby would show Jeremy his concept character in the sketches he had worked on. And let's just say, he was asking for a lawsuit.
He's got this guy on the screen with a whip and a hat, and I said, that's why he's bloody Indiana Jones.
So Jeremy would order him to change the design.
It was very clear that I wanted to make it a feminine character, so to be feminine I had to exaggerate feminine characteristics. So for a start, gave her long hair, but the only way that we could represent that in a game in any conceivable way would be to give her a ponytail. To make her seem athletic, I wanted to give her basically a leotard, okay? Because she's an adventurer, we needed to give her something to put her goods and chattels in, so a backpack had to be strapped onto her back, you know, so that was fine. The walking boots going on at the bottom. The double gun holsters, we clearly had to have her having that. It's the way the straps go across the legs, which sort of make the whole leg more interesting. Everything about Lara was to exaggerate her femaleness. Yeah, so then that's basically how the final design looked.
Now that's a familiar face. But when it came to the game, Toby's ambition was held back by the hardware at the time, which limited things like the type of action sequences they could implement, which were a fundamental part of the game's core design. But having a talented team of developers really does come in handy in these situations. And after some months of development, they finally had something to present. Paul and Toby had impressed Jeremy with a tech demo of their game, and although it doesn't look like much to our Fidelity spoiled eyeballs, at the time, it was innovative beyond pretty much anything the gaming industry had seen.
Mind blown.
Now the next question was, what would this protagonist be named? All that's left is just a name.
Oi, Miller, what have you got? What about Laura Cruz? Hold on. Those bloody Americans can't pronounce a damn thing.
But Cruz? What about Croft?
You're a genius, me boy. You're a genius.
And surely there wouldn't be any mispronunciations of this name in the future.
So I've seen the movie and I grew up with the games. I gotta ask, it just occurred to me as I was introducing you.
Lara
or
Laura?
Now we've got a freeform
Laura Croft.
Tomb Raider follows the chronicles of it's
Lara Croft.
Yes, Lara. This is my first complaint. It should be
Laura.
You want to say Laura. Everybody wants to say Laura. And everybody does say Laura secretly, but somewhere along the line, some prick was like, no, it's Lara. All right, well, I'm con man. Goddamn American.
Wait. We know it's not pronounced Laura. Everyone else says
Laura.
But apparently it's pronounced Lara? Let's hear how the man himself says her name.
When it came to creating
Lara Croft,
I mean, that was...
To say the idea of a game like Tomb Raider was ambitious would have been an understatement. Not many other games with a female lead existed at the time, with Metroid being a notable exception, of course. And even then it was presented as a shocking reveal towards the end of the game. But this time, it would be a very obvious strong female lead, who was not in danger, but was the danger. The Folly is a much more vertical level, with a challenge room located on each story. Each room represents a mythological figure and has a key that we need in order to unlock this door that leads to the next level. We can play some hopscotch with these two lions, give this block a nice heave-ho, which opens the door that houses the first lever. The first skip of the level starts here, where Lara can jump over this tile, which would normally trigger a boss fight with Pierre as we exit. It also keeps the door we entered through open, skipping the need to pull an extra lever, sparing these gorillas. For now. Heading back out, we can perform a huge corner bug, instantly taking Lara to the top of this area, and after some platforming, now it's time to revisit. Dropping into the water, we can perform a unique skip where Lara can clip between the gap in this gate while having to avoid this crocodile, and he can be very nice and circle around before attacking, or camp the gate and continuously collide with Lara's hitbox, making the glitch much more difficult and pretty much forcing a reload. And not to mention the water current constantly pushing Lara backwards as well. But this isn't really a hard skip, but it can become tedious. So, option A or option B? Which one do you think I got most of the time?
今回は逃げ延びたかもしれないな、冒険者よ。でも
And after successfully performing the glitch, we've now reached the main area of the Folly, where Lara can pull each lever while heading down. And after pulling the last lever, perform a wall bug to head all the way back to the top and enter the first challenge room. Making our way to the key is simple enough, and after we pick it up, the name starts to make sense. We can then exit the room and perform another wall bug that takes us to the next challenge room. There's not that much to see in this level besides the tried and true pulling a lever and collecting a key, and from now on, we'll be referring to that as pluck. And we'll be doing a lot of plucking. Exiting this room, we can then do some more platforming and then enter the next room. This next room has a gorilla that just won't be able to make it to its family dinner, and also a boulder that we need to avoid and a key that we need to collect. We can avoid the boulder by performing a wall bug. And then collect the key and exit the room. We can then use a delay grab that slightly pushes Lara forward and make our way to the final challenge room. The Thor room has this giant disco ball that shoots electricity, which normally deals damage. But being a part-time insulator comes with the whole laws of Lara thing, so if you were to hold action while landing from a jump, it prevents Lara from taking any damage and takes us to this giant hammer. We can then stand underneath it to bring down this block that we can get on top of, and then do a setup with inventory buffers and a running jump towards the wall. This then takes us right in front of the key and spares us from 40 seconds of just this. As we head out of the room, Lara can once again disregard the entire field of electrodynamics, and we can make our way to the door to place the keys. But before we get there, we've got somebody to deal with. Pierre finally makes his entrance, and although there's nothing more Lara would love to do than engage him to some 12 gauge, after he takes enough damage, he just runs away and disappears. Like a little. So instead, it's time for another game of...
Uh-oh, how unfortunate. Uh-oh, how unfortunate.
Before we can use the keys, we first have to take out 2 lions and avoid an unbelievably accurate Pierre shooting at us. After dropping down, the lions can be at a safe distance, allowing for a backflip and some back steps to avoid them and take them out easily. Or they can be right where she lands and delete her health bar in a second. So once again, option A or option B.
Finally!
Which one do you think I got most of the time? But after taking out the lions, we can then place down each key and head to the... This level takes place in a Colosseum where we have to do some more plucking and has this open area with a pit full of animals, but luckily for us, or luckily for them actually, we can avoid it completely with this route. We can start off with an immediate wall bug here that puts Lara to the other side of this wall and into a body of water. And swimming up, we can then align Lara to perform a running wall bug and just completely leave this line in the dust, which puts her around like twice as fast as an Olympic sprinter. After jumping and shimmying across this ledge to avoid these crocodiles, Lara can then perform another banana jump as she slides down the wall and enters the Colosseum. As we make our way towards the first key, there's really only one notable glitch in this route, the flicker. This time, it saves around 3.5 minutes when compared to the glitchless route. Pulling the lever and then exiting, we then are greeted by... He's just gonna run away again, so we'll ignore him once more. In due time, Lara. In due time. Since there's not many glitches left to do that we haven't seen before, if you're familiar with any GDQ runs, this is probably the time where they'd read some anonymous $500,000 donation. So instead, I'm just gonna hit the fast forward. And now that Lara has collected the main key, she can use it to drop into the water, pull a lever that opens the gate, and then swim to the next level. Meanwhile, at Core Design, development of Tomb Raider is going pretty well. The team is making good progress. The identity of the game is taking shape, and the game looks very promising. What could possibly go wrong? Center Gold then goes broke. They had been the company funding most of Core Design, and Core relied on Center Gold's investment to keep afloat. But if you take a look at that Tomb Raider 1 cover again, you can spot a pretty familiar looking company right there in the corner. You know them, you love them, Eidos Interactive. But depending on who you are, you know them, you hate them, Eidos Interactive. Eidos, previously known as Dumark, had acquired Center Gold for relatively cheap, and naturally, had owned Core Design as well. The co-founder of Eidos, Ian Livingston, was also a businessman, like our dear friend Jeremy. So one day, Ian would take a trip to the Core Design studio and leave a new man, because he had been so impressed with the concept of Tomb Raider. Like, how was a 3D character moving in a 3D environment with such fluidity and amazing graphics? For the time, of course, which is pretty important to the development of this story. Take a second to think back to when you were but a wee little child, and you first laid your eyes upon Star Wars: The Force Unleashed 2 for the Nintendo DS. Remember how immersed you were, how fluid the controls felt, how beautiful it looked? And now take a look at it. Oh my. But that initial feeling is all that mattered, and that feeling is what Ian was left with. And after purchasing Center Gold and subsequently Core Design was back on its feet, and Eidos now owned the rights to everything Tomb Raider. What could possibly go wrong? But this also made Tomb Raider the top priority for Eidos. But Sony, who Eidos would pitch the game to, would actually reject it at first, and they wanted to see more. Well, slap a never-before-seen 3D grid level-based system, detailed water mobility only seen in 2D side-scrollers, and some athletic 3D animations. And well,
I'll take that offer. Done.
Really?
Big thanks to this guy, by the way. And after around 2 years of development and a little over $1 million in budget, Tomb Raider was released in 1996 to the Sega Saturn, shortly to the PC, and then the PlayStation 1. Look at you now, Toby. A young game artist who was now the creator of what was seen as potentially Core's greatest hit. What could possibly go wrong? Palace Midas has Laura doing something different for a change. She needs to collect 3 lead bars and somehow turn them into gold, and then use them to open the door that leads to the next level. Midas is a much larger level, and even the glitch route takes us to almost every subsection of the level, so it's best we don't waste any more time and immediately swim up and greet our dear old friend. Who she then makes quick work of, and making our way to the main area, there are several switches that need to be pulled in different combinations to open different parts of the level, but first. Sensational. Corner bugging up the platform, we can pull the first lever which opens the first room, and it contains some basic jumps. But after grabbing the lead bar, these flame pillars are activated, but we can maneuver around them with some precise jumps. Corner bugging back up the main platform and pulling the 5th, 3rd, and 1st levers, the next room is now opened, and making our way into the room, it seems like this father came back with the milk just a little too late, but we'll take him out of his misery. This room contains spikes that are an insta-kill if Laura falls on any of them, and jumping through the corner of this block, we can then pull this lever. How many levers have we pulled by now? And this raises the pillars near the spikes. In this game, Laura can walk through the spikes without taking any damage, and then perform a careful corner bug, get harassed by this gorilla, grab the lead bar, and then leave.
The fuck is my family? You burned my house to the ground! My family's dead!
And with only 1 bar left, now it's time to backtrack past the start of the level and enter an area with a horde of wild animals. We can then perform a wall bug here that we kind of just eyeball, but this takes us to the last lead bar on top of the roof, and now we'll drop down and just run away from all that commotion. We can then pull this lever and try our best to escape. Attempting that again, and trying to out-heal their ridiculous DPS, Laura can barely escape with her life and use a med pack to restore her health. Now all we need to do is turn these lead bars into gold bars, and there wouldn't happen to be a conveniently placed magic hand that turns everything into gold nearby. Would there? Entering this new section of the level, we can avoid these gorillas, find the Midas hand that gives us the gold bars that we need, and place them backwards as to not accidentally step on the hand. And once we have all the gold bars, it's time for a classic known as the Derrick Henry. Because once again, Lara has to make her way back to the main area and avoid an entire defensive line made of nothing but zoo animals.
Avenge me!
After successfully completing the second Derrick Henry, we're back in the main area, and we can perform a pretty unique glitch with this door, where Lara can completely bypass this door that leads to the final area of the level. And similar to the level that shall not be named, it is extremely easy for this glitch to be ruined by any of these animals. And it doesn't help that there's a horde of them chasing her right now. And to perform this glitch, we're gonna have to reference the
So you want to learn how to phase through a f***ing door?
We need to embed Lara within the door by performing 2 running jumps. And next, we need to align the edge of this screen with this exact pixel, and then do another
Where the fuck is my family?
and perform another running jump where she can pop out on the other side of the door, and you have successfully phased through a f***ing door. Entering the final area, we can see a line that's frozen because we skipped the trigger that activates it, and all that's left is to insert each gold bar and make our way to the probably one of the coolest levels in the first Tomb Raider is the Cistern, an ancient underground facility that was originally built to hold rainwater. This is what one looks like in real life, by the way. This level features an alternative state that raises the water and gives us access to more areas. This is done through something known as flip maps that we activate by pulling a lever. In terms of the objective for this level, given that there's a bunch of levers and a bunch of keyholes, it's only natural that we pluck like there's no tomorrow. Starting off, Lara can add rats to her extinction list, but honestly, I'm not complaining. And the usual, pushing a block, platforming, and now we get to the main area. The normal way to complete this level is to switch between the flooded and dry states of the level, and then collect the keys in between. But it's actually faster if we keep it flooded and glitch Lara throughout the level. After some platforming and a corner bug, we eventually meet our old friend Pierre, but he just doesn't seem to get the memo of any percent, so we can ignore him once again and pull the lever to switch the level to its flooded state. Making our way out, the first key is just to the left, and after picking it up, with all this water and all this height, you know what has to happen.
Oh, I'm about to dive in.
We can then swim to the area with the first key and avoid all of this platforming by performing a unique type of wall bug, brilliantly named the swim bug. We need to align Lara with this corner, turn 45 degrees, and then dive. After that, it's time to platform and pluck. And after that, it's time to swim around the corner, pluck once again, completely ignore this guy, and then use one of the keys we've collected. And after collecting this med pack for safety, we can pick up the gold key. Now it's time to swim up and finish the water segments of this level. Use 2 more keys. Use this gold key as this gorilla tries to avenge his fallen, but it's just simply too weak. And enter the final area where we can ignore these lines and hope for good AI as we pull this block, and then have Lara jump down and fall. But not to her death, but to the As the level title suggests, Lara has finally reached the second tomb, and just like before, the goal is to burglarize it for its precious artifact and commit copious amounts of grand larceny. The level starts with Lara dropping down from her fall from the previous level into some water, where we need to pull a lever to lower the water and swim up to pull another lever that opens the gate. We can then enter this room to perform one of the riskiest glitches in the game, but before then, we've got some business to attend.
お前と俺は似ているんだ。どちらも己の道を進み、何者も目標の前に立ちふさがることを許さない。それなのに、運命の書が我らを相平たせるとは、なんという皮肉か。さあ、冒険者よ。今こそ我と相まみえよ。
Throughout the run, we've seen Lara jump between certain blocks in order to skip this long animation. Performing this is very consistent and doesn't pose much risk, but that's until we reach this block. which does come with the teeny not so tiny risk of soft locking the game, because in this spot, there's a wall bug that teleports Lara up to where we wish to go, but let's say you mess up the angle of the jump by just a pixel. She can then end up behind the block, but that's no big deal because she could just push the block out the way, right? Okay, maybe from the left. The right? This effectively soft locks the game. You just can't get out. Just you, Lara, and this med pack. So I hope you saved, because if you didn't, and if you were thinking about doing a no-save run, so if we wish to avoid this unfortunate outcome, take a moment to thank the almighty devlords at Asper for allowing us to toggle between the classic graphics and find these exact pixels to align Lara with, because without them, and then jumping forward successfully performs the glitch, and now Lara can ride the water current, jump on top of and then align herself with this block, and swan dive for some extra distance to make this jump. Then perform a corner bug in this spot, avoid this swinging axe, and perform this conveniently displayed setup for this banana jump. Which narrowly avoids her falling into the water and also skips pulling an extra lever, which there are more than enough in this game. Lara can then swim up, and to avoid further AI subjugation, Lara can use that shotgun ammo we've been collecting and remind this line that it is so far from home and simultaneously so close to it, and execute the classic lever pulling, platforming, and key collecting. Looks like we are mixing it up this time, eh? And using that key, we can make our way to the next section that I call leg day, because there's a lot of block pushing, key collecting, more block pushing, and some more key collecting. Okay, we get it. Now using those two keys opens up access to the cave that leads to the tomb of Tihocan, and transitions to a new segment of the level that contains the actual tomb. And here, I attempted setup for a wall bug and fail epically. In order to access the tomb, we need to pull this lever that opens a gate that we then have to swim to by finding this small entrance. And once inside, you'll never guess what we have to do next.
Yeah, that's right. You better pull me. Yeah, nice and slow.
Shut up. When'd you start talking? Exiting and swimming towards the tomb means that we're near the end of the level, but before that, we've got to introduce ourselves to a new type of enemy. Toby, come on. What even is that? Up until now, Lara's only been slaughtering the typical zoo animal and the occasional rodent, but from this point forward, the game starts to get kinda wacky. Yep, I don't know what nightmare boner the developers had when making these things, but they do not mess around. They have a ridiculous amount of health, shoot fireballs that make them DPS machines, explode when they die, and if you thought one wasn't enough, another can spawn right after that also shoots fireballs, so we're just gonna skip these. Entering the tomb and nearing the end of the level, Lara can finally settle a score. Pierre uses magnums, which do significantly more damage than whatever Larson was shooting with, and attempting a fair fight would just deplete us of our med packs. So, Lara can just stand on this pillar and just stuff him with lead. Oh, look at him go and try to escape. Someone should have told him about the door glitch. You know, you'd think after all of those ambushes that the final encounter would be a little bit more eventful, but no, he just kind of slumps over and just kicks it. So I decided to add a more satisfying version of his demise, which comes from the anniversary edition of this game.
Comme ça, you have it. Bonne chance.
Now we just collect his loot, platform up and use the key, and finish the level. When Lara combines both Scion pieces, she must have forgot to read the LSD warning and experiences what I can only imagine is what happens when you divide by 0. She learns about how 2 rulers took the 3rd piece of the Scion from the 3rd because of how they tried to create some type of monster. That ruler was then imprisoned, and now Lara knows that the final piece is in Egypt.
Meanwhile, at Core Design.
Listen, Toby, we completely get it, not wanting her to be some salubrious fantasy to the minds of the public, wanting her to be taken seriously, not by the proportions of her polygons, but by the merit of her might. Yes, I'm so glad you understand. But it seems like you're just missing one large factor. 2 of them even. And what's that? Well, it's that. An important factor during the game's development was how they would market to an American audience, which has always been a huge market for many industries. And on one innocent day of development, Toby was working on Lara's model and whoa! It seems like our innocent developer cranked up those hooter handles just a tad bit too much and gave Lara what he thought was just a silly look. And when he showed the team, they also agreed that it was pretty silly, but she needed a more defined shape to distinguish her as a woman because of the lower polygon count. But here's the thing. While Core saw parody, Eidos saw potential.
Now what's this got to do with the American market?
You diligently ask. Well, if any of the recent discourse on female characters in Western games has anything to say, it's that they love them a nice pair of boobies. Now Eidos, being the visionaries that they were, saw this as a goldmine to get some of that sweet USD. And a goldmine it was. And a gold mine it was.
Haven't answered really, but twice as big.
When I hear the name Lara Croft, the first thing that comes to mind is probably the size of her chest, if I'm honest.
First thing comes into my mind, tits. Honest but true.
She's got an enormous chest.
Enormous breasts.
I mean, her biggest discussion point were the size of her breasts.
She's quite busty, so she's got to be held really well.
People were so not used to seeing a girl in a game, so the first thing they homed in on was the boobs. And it was like, woof. But everybody kept coming up and seeing, they go, wow, she's so big. So we'd have to make her smaller, and somebody go, well, no, you know. And it was just ridiculous that you can't believe how many different sizes she actually went through.
During the classic series, promotional materials seemed to be more for Lara Croft and less for Tomb Raider as a whole. Let's just take a gander at this magazine cover for the Fixe in 1997. The Silicon chick, bigger than Pammy. Oh, Toby, you poor thing. Toby wanted Lara to be more
the undead. Will the next tomb Lara Croft enters be her own?
And Eidos agreed, but also wanted her to be more.
Here, write this down. I'm 362436, and I'm a Scorpio. Got it? I've got the brains, the brawn, and the polygons to win this thing.
And for a while, Lara's marketing always had to include some sort of innuendo, and the effects of that. Wow. Let's just take a quick listen at this fan's explanation on why he fell in love with Lara Croft.
I started to play the game for the first time. I sort of fell in love with her. She's got this amazing figure and this beautiful accent, and she's quite perfect. And you aren't going to find that in reality, so there's no point looking for it. I've been on dates with all kinds of people, but I've never met anybody like Lara. Most of the dates I've been on aren't as pretty as Lara.
Sorry, I had to interrupt. He has to be a paid actor. He's over there confessing things that only Batman could get out of someone. Let's continue. When Tomb Raider released, it crushed the bottom line and came with outstanding reviews. The graphics, marvelous. The gameplay, astounding. A truly innovative work of art.
Guys, not only is the gameplay amazing, he's got some really big stuff.
Enough of you. Let's also take this man's testimony for example as well.
When Kelly was pregnant and I was playing it non-stop, I actually booked a week off work, Monday to Friday, just to play it.
But he's never took 5 days off to be solely with me, but he's took 5 days off to play with Lara Croft, which is a bit worrying at times. I mean, at first it really did bother me in playing Tomb Raider all the time. We're playing with Lara Croft again.
So are we going to go and play with Lara again, are you?
Now, any spare time normally we would spend together, but now he's playing Tomb Raider, you know, and I would just be sitting there quite bored.
Bores Kelly to bits.
But Lara Croft was in between of us.
Again, only Batman. Nonetheless, much of its success was attributed to the innovative gameplay, graphics, and that Lara was a woman. Tomb Raider would capture a female fan base that most games just couldn't capture at the time, and for many like myself, this was their introduction into gaming, which was all Toby's intention. But what wasn't his intention was core design being asked to include a code to remove Lara's clothing by the time the sequel came around. Around 5 months after Tomb Raider's initial release, a popular UK games magazine would release a segment about a leaked code from the core team that would remove Lara's clothes and stated that it was to amuse them during those lonely nights playtesting the levels. Now in hindsight, the code obviously never existed, but like a spark in the forest, this is all it took for the fanbase to be set ablaze. And this was at a time when you couldn't just Google whether this was true or not, so gamers all around would spend weeks trying to find this nude code and had even called the magazine for more insight.
Moshi moshi.
Now this may sound pretty stupid nowadays, but I would like for you to remember when you were just a wee little lad and found some random diamond camo glitch on YouTube and swore that it was real and you just weren't doing it right.
That right there, and you're gonna kill yourself.
And although the instructions made like no sense, you tried it anyways. Seriously, this guy. And if these polygons made gamers go into frenzy back then, and even though this code never existed, some modders would make a nude raider. And that, well,
This ain't no rated motherfucking PG shit. This shit rated porn.
and one would reasonably ask themselves, why couldn't Toby just put a stop to it? But the thing is that the drawings, the characters, the game, it wasn't his. They belonged to Eidos. This level is more of a segue to the next level, so the only thing required is to grab one key to open the door to the next level. Immediately starting off with another conveniently displayed setup, we can skip all of this. And after some platforming to avoid that vengeful feline, we can do a corner bug to get to the top of this platform and jump on this roof. I did also forget to mention the fact that Lara can just jump through gaps and fences because honestly, who's gonna stop her? Now to get up to this ledge, there's another wall bug here that's pretty tricky and requires a precise roll just as Lara disappears, but my game just wasn't a fan, which results in an instant faceplant and an insta-kill no matter the health. However, the much cooler glitch is done by running between this wall and this sarcophagus, which allows Lara to teleport to the top of the surface to then platform to the next area. Once in here, Lara can then do a dive, which gives her more horizontal distance, where we can then pick up the one and only key of this level. Exiting the area and making our way down to the final part of the level, we can then do what's known as a slope bug by performing a wall bug but on a slanted surface. And that takes us to the end of the level where we can place the key and make our way to the... As punishment for skipping 80% of that previous level, the Obelisk has much more to do and harder glitches to perform. This level contains 4 drawbridges and each contain artifacts that we have to return to the pillar from the previous level. It's full of levers, and more levers. And also like the previous level, this level contains an immediate setup that positions Lara for one of my favorite glitches in the game. And for this one, we'll have to revisit the... Since the dev team is a thing for mildly inconvenient architecture, Lara's devised a plan to give the structural integrity of matter the middle finger. So, how would our adventurer manage to bypass this gap in the wall? Well, it's certainly not by swan diving at it, and not by wall bugging around it, and especially not by asking nicely.
Fuck you, you bitch ass.
This glitch is just Lara squatting so aggressively that it forces her to the other side of the window with just complete disregard for physics. Better open wide window, because she's gonna be inside of you, and she's gonna like it. The window skip first requires a setup to embed Lara inside of the window, and then by holding forward in either left or right, we can then rotate Lara enough to angle herself to the left corner of the window, and by holding jump, she can then move backwards and exit on the other side. So to put it simply, setup, rotate, assert dominance. Don't be like that. It could have been worse. We've now made it inside and saved around a minute of, I'm sure you know by now. We can then do some specific routing where we do a slight curve jump to the right to reach this first lever, pull it, which lowers the first drawbridge, and then we can corner bug up this wall and head to said drawbridge. Lowering the next drawbridge requires doing a wall bug near this lever that we thankfully do not have to pull.
Well, come on.
Just for another one to surprise us as soon as she lands.
Surprise, bitch.
And after pulling that lever, that's 2 out of 4 drawbridges down, And there's a pretty tight jump to get to the next lever. And there's a pretty tight jump to get to the next lever. And there's a pretty tight jump to get to the next lever. We'll just take the stairs. And pulling this lever lowers the third drawbridge. And with one more lever to go, a swan dive, running jump, and a forward jump takes us to the final lever. And now with all the drawbridges down, Lara can go and collect the goods. And once we have all the artifacts, it's time to exit the obelisk. But since we used the glitch to enter, we're gonna have to come out the way we came in. Which means...
No. Wait. Wait.
Performing yet another setup, embeds Lara into the wall, but this time, there isn't really much to tell which direction she's facing, so by using the look button to tilt the camera downwards, Lara is partially visible, and at about this angle, she can begin to jump backwards and then, backtracking past the start of the level, Lara can then T-1000 through this fence due to the small gap inside of it, and after a light jog, can do the same to this one too, except there's no gap in this one, she just does what she wants. And at the home stretch of the level, we can jump down, place the artifacts, which opens the exit of the level where we can finish and head to the... One of the longest levels in the game is the Sanctuary of the Scion. Like, just look at this layout. We've got to collect 2 Ankhs, find a scarab, and then finally the last piece of the Scion. So for this level, I'm gonna be a little bit more liberal with the fast forwarding. To start off the level, Lara must have upset Mother Nature and the forces that be, because now we have these abominations to deal with. And quick aside, you know, when you try to imagine what an Atlantean would look like, you know, one thinks maybe blue, scaly, some gills, but these Lovecraftian monstrosities are just like a different type of, oh, my bad, I'm sorry. You know that feeling when you expect something and kind of get caught off guard? You know, things can be a little bit more, you know, harsh. What do you say, friends? I knew I was right. Anyways, picking up this magnum ammo and going up top of these blocks leads us into the main area on top of the Sphinx. And oh look, another victim. Heading down the Sphinx and into this corner, we can perform a pretty nice slow bug to get all the way up here. And
another one.
And now for the routine lever lap pull down with emphasis on the slow negative to maximize muscular hypertrophy. And as we head down, there are 2 flying Atlanteans that we should deal with, but this one seems to know what's best for them. Heading to this pillar and then doing a slope bug, we can head to the next lever, and after we pull it, it seems like they don't really value their life after all. So then Lara can send them a message in 9mm, and then slide down, and then head inside to collect the first Ankh. Inside, there's a key underwater that Lara can dive to get, and after making our way back up, we can then use said key to open up the room with the first Ankh. It's guarded by another Atlantean centaur, and just look at that. Now it's time to collect the next Ankh, and after a brief moment of backtracking, the second flying Atlantean shows up and decides to forfeit their life to the Grim Reaper herself. Now we have to make our way to the other side of the level, so just a moment. And to once again demonstrate her knack for instantaneous mobility, she can slow bug up this wall, enter this room, and then slowly perform a corner bug that then traps her inside of the ceiling?
It worked.
That's what you get. Nice work, everyone. And that's from my friend Window.
And that's for all the corners you've bugged.
But by this point, we should all know who we're dealing with.
Oh, come the fuck on.
No.
And same as before, we can grab the Ankh with our finger on the 9 key, but this one might need some glasses. As we leave the room,
hey, you know, I know we've had our differences, but I just wanted to say that I never doubted your abilities and you're the greatest being to ever step foot on this planet. So if you could just find an ounce of forgiveness in that cold abyss that you call a heart, that'd be very nice.
No.
And now that we have both Ankhs, we can avoid whatever that one's doing down there, slow bug up this wall, and now it's time to place down both of the Ankhs, which opens up a passage at the bottom of the Sphinx. And sliding down the Sphinx, we've now reached the bottom of the level, where we now need to grab the scarab, so we can first swim down to pull this lever, which activates a current that pushes Lara into the room, but it can be cancelled if we first save and then reload. And then heading out of the water, there's another lever because, of course there is. And then diving back into the water leads Lara through a passage that heads to the start of the level. But to get back there, it's quite the upwards hike. So why not spend this time to be serenaded by simply the greatest song to ever exist? Back at the start of the level, we need to place down the scarab. But now we've got some Atlanteans that can make it pretty hard to even use it. So a pseudo strat that can help sometimes is to angle Lara slightly and then take a step back after picking up the scarab, and then pray. As you can see, those med packs come in handy. Entering the final part of the level, Lara meets Larson once more, and we can just ignore this boss battle and then grab the Scion. But I think it's time for a little bit more bloodshed. And now, she can grab the final piece of the Scion. With Lara now in possession of all 3 pieces of the Scion, the credits forgot to roll, so it's only a matter of time before something bad happens, and there it is.
You just pulled the tough end of a wishbone.
Lara is then captured by a cowboy, a surprise Mendez cameo, and to absolutely no one's surprise, this has all been orchestrated by Natla, and I'm just going to let this play in all of its 90s FMV glory.
Your little vacation riot's over now. Time to give back what you've hijacked off me.
Let's try the lunchbox.
Well, kill her!
Hey!
Ooh, I'm about to die! You morons! Let's go.
Lara then follows them on her motorcycle with the accumulated rage of all of my attempts from Lost Valley. She makes her way to this conveniently ramp-shaped cliff, and oh my.
Ooh, I'm about to dive in.
What the heck was that?
Aura. That's what that was. Aura. And after another instance of where the Natla even find these guys, Lara manages to sneak onto the boat and passes out from too much aura farming. Lara sneaks out of the ship.
I hope no one heard that.
And enters. With zero regard for her own self-preservation, Lara has now reached Natla's mines, where she has no weapons to start off with. The level is pretty straightforward in direction, but we are going to be skipping all of the puzzles and complete the level without collecting any weapons. The level begins with Lara swimming into the mines, and after exiting the water, it's time for the return of my favorite glitch, the Quap. Using this setup, this Quap is much easier to perform than the first one from level 2, and it allows Lara to phase underneath this drill and saves around 1.5 minutes of puzzling. Further into the level, the cowboy shows up and demands a duel, but I think I'd much rather perform this curve jump and do to this lever what must be done. And after some cave expeditioning, the skater eventually shows up and wastes no time trying to get to Lara, but he kinda decided to take the long way, so we'll just mosey on along. And up ahead, we can avoid this boulder and access a new area of the level using the same inventory buffer setups from the Thor room. And then Lara can perform a wall bug that skips a lot of platforming and then push this cheese block. We can then jump in between the cracks, pull this lever, which opens an entrance that we can get to by pushing another cheese block and jumping through the corner again. And that then takes us to this final block that we have to push. And up ahead, there's a door here that is not meant to be exited out of, but we do not care. Because by performing this setup,
Wait, what are you doing?
Lara can bait the door open.
Stop that right now. Stop that right. No. That's not allowed. That's not. You're cheating.
And narrowly squeeze through.
Stop.
Coming up towards the end of the level, we can make our way to the pyramid and use it as a platform to running jump to the lever that opens the entrance for this next puzzle piece that we then backtrack to get and can be placed down to open the pyramid right next to this poor bastard. What was that? I'll pay for my sins. Speak up, I can't really hear you. That's what I thought. Bitch. And then complete the level. Meanwhile, from inside, Natla places down the Scion, which reveals the ancient pyramid. goal of this level is simple, and it's to destroy the Scion. Now, I don't know how this level rings Atlantis, but it's kind of genius. Let's just take a quick tour. Straight away, you'll notice the fleshy floors and the pulsating walls. And just up ahead, we've got some of our world-famous egg pods. But honestly, it kind of reminds me of that level from DMC3 inside of the Leviathan, except Tomb Raider did it first, with many more puzzles, many more levers, and even a fight with your clothes. Shit. Atlantis is on the larger side of the levels too, and has many floors, which can take hours to complete on a first playthrough. Don't ask me how I know. But just like level 4, we'll be skipping it all. At the start of the level, the game gives us back our pistols, and also gives us Uzis, and let's just say, they're pretty good. Killing those Atlanteans leads us to the upper level, and after our government-mandated lever pulling, Lara can use the same inventory buffer from the previous level to perform like the mother of all wall bugs and take her from here all the way up here, skipping pretty much the entire level. Need I say more of this woman's power level? This is a massive glitch that skips all of the triggers for the enemies in the final area. We can go through this entrance where Lara can pull this first lever and make our way around the frozen Atlanteans to pull the second lever. And if you listen closely, you can hear the screams of agony. And finally, Lara has reached the completed Scion. It turns out that Natla was the third Atlantean ruler all along, to literally no one's surprise, and was banished for betraying the other rulers by using the Scion for genetic experimentation.
Of your powers, and for robbing us of ours.
You can't,
Breaking the three bond of consent that our people are ruled and secured under, and invading Tihocan and myself with our army.
She would explain that this was to create an army to further the Atlantean race, because she viewed them as nothing but
wasters.
And as punishment, she was put into a cryogenic chamber and was kept there until the nuclear test site in the prologue. As if you didn't already have enough on your plate. But this was a pretty bad idea. Placing her in a cryogenic chamber would just mean that she would get to outlive them and eventually be freed, which is exactly what happened. And once freed, Natla continues her plans of global domination through her mutant army and drops a classic line.
Hatching commences in 15 seconds.
Too late for abortions now.
Lara, having probably seen enough sci-fi movies, realizes how bad of an idea that is and tries to shoot the Scion.
Not without the heart of the operation.
But Natla would hit Lara with the meanest of flying shoulders and supposedly fall to her death. And after recovering,
4, 3, 2, 1.
Lara's now in the starting off, it's finally time for a proper boss fight. Little fun fact, did you know that Lara Croft was the first person to slay an actual Titan? I mean, just look at it. Scary. But the scariest thing about this encounter isn't even the actual fight, which just consists of holding down the shoot button until it ceases to exist. More often than not, you'll probably be reloading a save from maneuvering around the platform, trying to get away from this thing, and accidentally falling, and falling. But eventually, Lara can RSVP it to the gates of hell and just bask in its suffering. But Lara's mission isn't done yet, because the Scion is still out there, and she needs to destroy it. Making our way out of this area, there's a bunch of puzzling and platforming, so you know what comes next. And now it's time to destroy the Scion, which, for an all-powerful artifact, it doesn't really stand a chance against a couple 9mm rounds. And that Indiana Jones influence really starts to show, because now it's time to escape the pyramid. And that Indiana Jones influence really starts to show, because now everything wants to kill Lara. There's boulders, spikes, lava, arrows, swinging axes, and just all sorts of hoopla. So, here's a quick rundown of this escape sequence and all the random bullshit go this level throws at us. First, a lava section with some shimmying, some spikes next to an axe that really doesn't do much, some platforming to avoid more lava, avoiding a boulder and a swinging axe, yet another axe, a room with the lever that fills up with lava, narrowly avoiding yet another boulder, platforming in a room of fire pillars, falling down in some conveniently placed water, and swimming out of this weird pool with fleshy walls. And at the home stretch, Lara's got one final obstacle. Now, Lara could fight her and deal with this mutated AC-130 with 2 lives. Or Lara can completely ignore her, perform a slope bug, and finish the game. But just to make sure Lara's bloodthirst is quenched, Lara manages to escape the pyramid right before it explodes. And rides away in Natla's boat. So, everything seems great. Lara beats an ancient god, Tomb Raider sells extremely well, Polygon Gooners, Polygoon, and everyone is happy. Well, except Toby. As the franchise gained more popularity, Toby just didn't have any say on what Lara could and couldn't do, and what she couldn't and couldn't be on.
The first thing that springs to mind if you say Lara Croft is probably, for me, the feeling of loss.
And he was forced to protest in the only way that he could, by quitting. Toby Gard, who had brought such creativity to the studio fresh out of college and had dedicated everything to this ambitious idea, would have to abandon what he created, what he cherished, and what he loved. In later interviews, he would explain that he wanted more extensive control over the marketing and that he was no longer given the creative freedom at core that he had had when creating Tomb Raider. Jeremy, being the businessman that he was, tried to appeal to Toby.
Toby, money.
Stating how rich he could become off of the Tomb Raider brand, and all he would have to do was nothing. But I think it's safe to say, at least at the time, that Jeremy just couldn't understand the artistic integrity Toby had for his work. And he thought that Toby leaving at such a time would be insanity. And as we know, he wasn't necessarily wrong. The original core studio would make 5 more games after this. Well, we'll get to you. The series would be rebooted twice, spawned 2 movies, and just made a boatload of cash.
But the first day of sales was extraordinary. She went straight to #1 in a matter of minutes, effectively, and stayed there for a very, very long time.
We as a company realised this was not just a video game. It had all the attributes, all the foundations, all the platforms to actually turn it into a true entertainment product.
I've been told that if you took all of the copies of Tomb Raider that were sold and piled them one on top of the other, you'd have a building 27 times the height of the Eiffel Tower. What a monstrous, monstrous hit it is.
But perhaps executives need to focus on why that is. Tomb Raider wasn't born out of corporate micromanagement. Jeremy would let the developers work with so much creative freedom and expression that it was just bound to happen. He trusted the developers in their vision and their ability to create, and that trust is what led to the magic that is Tomb Raider. In a landscape where modern development often feels risk-averse and just dictated by spreadsheets and charts, Tomb Raider's initial success is an important reminder that sometimes the best thing to do is just to let your creators create.
I kind of feel sad, in a way, I don't feel sad about the money because, I don't know, it's not really about the money. It's not for me anyway. I just wanted to make a game that people would enjoy. I know that sounds really soppy, but it's true. I mean, money's nice, it can get you extra things, but I don't think that's what it's really about. I have to remain detached because I know I have no control over what happens whatsoever. I've given up on feeling protective about it because the character just doesn't belong to me anymore.
And there you have it, folks. Not all stories have happy endings. But Toby would come back for the Tomb Raider Legend timeline, but that's for another video. Alright, please have mercy on some of the nitpicks. Had I gone for perfection, this video would never have been finished. But do feel free to leave them in the comments so I can learn from them in the future. And here are a bunch of games and topics that I do plan on covering in the future. But the next game will be on Metal Gear.
Who are you? Just call me Deep Throat.
And this guy.
Looks like you were right. Okay, Snake. I'll be a good girl. Okay, so we'll meet at the nuclear warhead storage building.
Wait, you said you'd stay put and be a good girl.
I'd like to give a very big thank you to the speedrunning community, the art community. You guys are great, especially because I was learning so many programs at once. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.
What more can I say about speedrunning? It's the bread to my butter, the butter to my biscuit, the biscuit to my backside.